Part 119. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1185. Okay, let's wait for news from you, Master Yureva said with a smile. Garen was speechless. This guy had become much more tactful in just 1 year. Compared to the silly young man back then, he was now no different from an ordinary uncle. Okay, if you have nothing to do, go back quickly and don't stay here too long. I know, Master. Watching the smiling Yureva leave, Garen closed the door and sat back on the sofa. Kuabai and the others went to another continent to investigate the situation of the massacre. I don't know what to do now. Yureva met another weirdo here, and it was a weirdo that was not in the original plot. Garen touched his chin. How do you feel? It's a bit like the world in the game. The first generation of Slayer, the second generation, the third generation? It's a bit interesting. Forget it, it's too troublesome to manage these things. I'd better live my ordinary life honestly and take good care of my body and mind. He was too lazy to think about these messy things. The main purpose of this world was to find what was interesting. This kind of too serious tracking mission is not suitable for him. It would be better to stay at home and watch movies and TV shows, play games, and go out for a stroll. He raised his watch and looked at the time. It was 8:15 in the evening. Go out for a walk and buy some food. Galen remembered that the snacks in the hotel room were almost gone and he had to go to the supermarket to replenish some. He grabbed his coat and walked outside. Walked out of the room, turned around, closed the door, and walked along the carpeted corridor to the elevator. The elevator entrance was empty, no one was there. It's probably time to take a rest, Garen muttered and pressed the elevator button. Ding. Just as one of the 4 elevator doors stopped at this floor, the door slowly opened. Galen walked in quickly and stood in the middle. There was also a fashionable OL girl in the elevator. She had cascading white blonde hair, fair and delicate skin like porcelain, tall and slender figure, wearing a black professional skirt and stockings. Holding a small black bag in his hand. When Garen came in, he was a bit too tall and strong, and she felt a slight sense of oppression when he walked in. It almost occupies a large space in the middle of the elevator. The girl reluctantly leaned against the wall, showing a helpless expression. Garen took out his room card, swiped it on the elevator, and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. There is a big supermarket chain there. Unexpectedly, the room card seemed to have no effect. I pressed it 2 or 3 times in a row and it still didn't work. Which floor are you going to? The girl couldn't stand it anymore. Garen's hand was waving in front of her, which made her panic. 3rd floor, thank you. Garen smiled sheepishly. Nothing. The girl took out her room card, swiped it, and pressed the 3 button. After swiping the card, the girl took out her phone and dialed a number. After 2 short waiting sounds, the call was connected. Then she began to babble in another language. Garen didn't understand either, so he was bored on the sidelines. Except for the 4 cornerstones, the rest of this world is actually still the world where ordinary people live. The 4 cornerstones are only known in a very small area, and the rest of the world is ordinary and ordinary. This is also the reason why he has been able to relax until now. Ding. The elevator stopped again from the 40th floor to the 9th floor. The door opened and a handsome young man walked in, wearing a suit and leather shoes. Seeing Garen walking out in white pajamas, he was obviously stunned for a moment, and then realized that the people who could stay in this kind of hotel would not be ordinary guests, and those who dared to come out dressed like this would certainly not its ordinary people. He smiled friendly at Garen. Garen ignored him. Since joining the security bureau, many people wanted to get close to him. Soon they reached the 3rd floor, and Galen walked out on his own. The supermarket was deserted, and the things inside were not expensive. Naturally, there weren't many people coming here to buy things. Quickly picking out several boxes of favorite snacks, Garen quickly checked out and returned to the elevator. The supermarket staff helped press the button. Then we waited quietly for the elevator. Ding! The elevator door opens. The girl was still inside, and when she saw Garen coming in, she was obviously stunned for a moment. Then he gave him a friendly smile. Garen felt that such a silly smile was inconsistent with his demeanor as a sword master, so he ignored her. Even though she was a beauty, it was not his favorite dish. I walked in with the box in my arms and soaked up a large area by myself. The girl was a little embarrassed, holding the strap of her handbag with both hands and lowering her head. The elevator soon reached the 40-plus floor, the floor where Galen had recently moved to. Carrying the things and walking out, he quickly returned to his room. Garen quickly sorted the snacks into categories, poured himself a glass of strawberry fruit wine, added some milk, added some ice cubes, and finally sprinkled some pepper and put a few slices of sausage to taste. Beautiful, take a sip. Not comfortable. He plopped down on the sofa and turned on the projector TV. Suddenly he remembered that he seemed to be missing something that he had forgotten to buy. He had food, but he still needed something to drink. Fruit wine alone was too monotonous. He stood up and looked at the item cabinet. There was not much milk in it. Garen wondered if he should get some more milk. He picked up the room card again and went out, and soon returned to the elevator entrance and pressed the button. After a while, the elevator opened. The girl with long platinum hair is actually still inside. The two looked at each other across the open threshold of the elevator and blinked a few times. Whack! Garen looked at the girl strangely and carefully. Are you addicted to taking the elevator? The girl looked a little embarrassed and forced a smile. His hands gripped the strap of the bag tighter. Excuse me, she suddenly said. Mr. Byron Corey, do you live here? Byron Corey, Garen had no idea what she was talking about. Who is this person? I don't know him. He looked at the other person up and down. Are you sick? The girl obviously didn't respond. It seemed that Garen's speech was a bit fast and she sounded laborious. What are you talking about? I asked. Are you sick? Garen repeated. The girl looked a little confused. Sorry, my foreign language is not very good. What are you asking? I said you were sick. Garen was speechless. You said I'm beautiful, the girl pointed at herself word by word and said blankly. Yes, you are very sick, very ill. Garen crossed his arms and looked helpless. Thank you for the compliment. The girl showed a shy and grateful smile. Actually, my makeup is not very good. I didn't say you were good at makeup and painting, Garen said, feeling a little pained. What do you mean? The pronunciation of beautiful and sick in Slan Mandarin are very similar, and the girl was confused again. You can't learn the language well, why are you coming here alone? Aren't you tired? Garen didn't want to talk nonsense with her anymore. Yes, I'm tired. This time she understood. The girl nodded hard. Go back to your country when you are tired. This is Mars, not suitable for people on Earth, Garen responded casually. Just as the elevator on the third floor opened, he walked out again. The girl still looked confused, she didn't understand anything about the Earth at all. Looking at Garen's leaving figure, she smiled slightly. Repeat the words Earth and Mars several times in a low voice. He's praising me, I guess. She was a little unsure. Garen stayed alone in the hotel to rest out of boredom. Some new developments were reported from the Nine-Tailed Fox. They had initially discovered the whereabouts of the massacre. Since they did not dare to contact him rashly, they could only observe from a distance. However, there was no news about the weirdo. Urawa mentioned that Garen asked the Security Bureau to investigate. After giving the feedback to Urawa, Garen was a little interested in the slaughterer. What he really cared about was not the divine pattern, but how strong the slaughterer was, who claimed to be the pinnacle of power in the world. So out of pure curiosity, he left the hotel and set off. After learning the location of the massacre reported back by Nine-Tailed Fox and the others, he quietly left the agreed-upon guarding point and headed straight for the massacre. On the endless blue ocean, a giant cruise ship slowly sailed towards the distant horizon. Sunshine, seagulls, water waves, plus the sound of waves and dolphins jumping sideways from time to time. Everything is as beautiful as a picture scroll. "Where is the massacre?" Garen leaned against the side of the ship and whispered as he looked at the jumping dolphins below. "It should be around here." A female intelligence officer from the security bureau dressed as a lady stood side by side with Garen, holding a glass of light green wine in her hand and sipping gently. Nine-Tailed Fox and the others are also nearby. "Yes. Arrange your people not to go too far nearby. If they are really at the bottom of the sea, they will be ready to help me at any time," Garen whispered. "Understood, sir." "Aren't you waiting for the other assistants to join?" the lady asked in a low voice. "No need." Garen shook his head. "Right now, Kuabai and the others are not too close to the slaughterer. In order to avoid being discovered by the other party, they chose a faraway island. There is a half-hour monitoring interval in the middle. This is the time when the slaughterer is most alert. It's just the right time for me to pass by." Garen had no intention of turning the confrontation between himself and the Slayer into a martial arts scene for everyone to watch. It happened that the slaughterer seemed to be diving into the seabed near here, searching for something, and he also had a blank period of time to get close. "Get your wetsuit ready." "Already prepared." Garen held the handrail of the ship's side, turned and walked towards a secret door in the cabin. The door there slowly opened, and a beautiful woman in a black suit bowed slightly at the door, with two long black knives leaning on her side. At the bottom of the sea, in a dark trench, a black figure was swimming quickly in the sea like a fish. Behind him were a group of dozens of men in silver diving suits. This group of people continued to shine along the trench with flashlights and headlamps, illuminating everything around them. Oh! A giant great white shark swam from a distance. Before it could get close, a black spear was pierced through the eye socket. A long black chain is connected behind the entire spear, and the source of the chain is held in the black figure's hand. "Clearance." The hoarse voice of the black figure sounded in this small area of the sea. All the silver figures quickly dispersed in all directions. "Start clearing any nearby threatening creatures." The great white shark strangely did not shed a trace of blood, but sank slowly, as if there was something heavy inside its body. Slowly, the eyes of the black figure lit up, like fine rubies, slowly glowing red. He slowly raised his head, seeming to feel something, and looked upward. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1186. Who do you think will win? On another sea ship, a tall man wearing a white military uniform asked in a low voice. Next to him stood a white-haired old woman, holding a cane and looking serious. "I don't know that we have never seen the strength of Juggernaut. He acts arrogantly and wantonly, and there is basically no opponent that he can't defeat. And the Slaughterer has been the strongest single entity since ancient times. It is estimated that the Slaughterer has a greater chance of winning." The old woman replied in a low voice. "The Sword Master is the greatest swordsman genius in the history of our country. No one in thousands of years can surpass him and achieve such an achievement at this age." The man in white military uniform shook his head. "I think the Sword Master has a better chance of winning. All the top Vulture officials are here, and there are not a few people who pay attention to the Juggernaut's casual trip to the decisive battle. You and I have personally mobilized on the first and second. Although we can't contact them, the masters from the other two countries are definitely watching this decisive battle secretly," the old woman said calmly. "Once the Juggernaut wins, our country, Ceylon, will become the most powerful among the three major countries. This is related to the international situation, and they cannot help but ignore it." Behind the two people stood a group of white military uniformed personnel, including men, women, old and young, all of whom looked a little solemn and solemn. These people were all experts from various groups of the National Security Bureau, and the maximum force was mobilized urgently, just in case of a sword attack. Shen lost and was able to rescue and leave as quickly as possible. "Then who do you want to win?" the man in white military uniform asked. The old woman didn't answer immediately and narrowed her eyes. In another sea, black submarines were cruising slowly, heading towards the location of the slaughterer and others, like a group of black sharks. The duel between Slan Kingdom's #1 genius, Sword Master Garen, and the slaughterer. It's really interesting to watch. But no matter how powerful you are, you can't compare to me, the Black Federation's Lord of the Battle flag wearing a black and gold suit. The tall officer man in front-line military uniform said loudly and proudly. Master Junkai must be watching this decisive battle in the dark, a female officer next to him responded. Of course. Master Zankai is in charge of the entire plan this time. Except for Master Zankai, all other strategic level forces are mobilized with him, and he almost has the highest command authority, the officer sneered. All we have to do is wait for Master Zankai to take action. When they both lose, hey. I just don't know where the people from the Red Country are. These cowardly and hypocritical guys have no use except talking about their gods all day long. It would be great if they could be wiped out together. The female officer was cold and stern. Road. Garen slowly changed his clothes. He was wearing a very eye-catching white diving suit, with a huge sickle moon painted on his back, which looked extremely arrogant. This is the crystallization of Sri Lanka's highest technology, an ultra-miniature high-strength defensive suit. There will be no more than 4 sets in the whole country, and one of them was allocated for the decisive battle between Garen and the slaughterer. After changing his clothes, Garen carried 2 black knives and walked to the side of the ship. 2 female agents on the side handed him an oxygen bottle and a mask. "I wish you good luck." Of course, Garen smiled, put on his mask, and jumped forward. Puff. Only a little splash of water was left on the sea, and it disappeared in an instant. The sea water continued to pass by Garen's ears, and bubbles bubbled up. There was a dim blue in front of my eyes. As time went by, he dived deeper and deeper, and then began to slowly open the weights on his body to increase his own weight. In the distance, he looked down and saw a black figure standing on the sandy surface of the seabed. The man's eyes glowed with an ominous red light, like blood. The two of them were tens of meters apart, but they could both clearly see each other's image. "Are you the slaughterer?" Garen spoke directly. Although he was separated by a mask, the external speaker also spread his voice. "What do you want to say?" The massacre's voice was distinctive and hoarse, as if an old man's throat had been broken. "Hindering my progress, it seems that he is challenging me to death again." His tone showed extremely strong confidence. That was the absolute confidence gained after killing too many so-called strong men. Garen did not reply. He was actually very curious about one of the 4 cornerstones. He came here mainly to test and see how powerful the slaughterer was. Laugh. Suddenly a black line pierced his waist from the side. Dang. The side of the galleon's handle blocks the black line, causing it to fly away. "You're really welcome," he chuckled and looked at the location where the massacre was. There was no one there. Turning sharply to the right, a pair of red eyes were rushing towards him. Bang! The two collided hard. They were stuck together like 2 masses of mucus, rolling and turning violently. Shoot towards the distance. The black gun and the double swords trembled and collided violently, colliding dozens of times in a very small space. The speed of the black gun is obviously faster than the double sword. This made Garen feel shocked. What a fast speed! My speed has reached the limit of human beings, and my physical fitness has now reached a terrifying level of 5 points on average, which is no less than that of ordinary giant beasts. His speed and strength are actually on par with me. Wind from all directions. With a loud bang, 4 rays of silver light lit up and flew out in all directions from Garen. The massacrer shook his hand, and the black gun split into dozens of gun shadows. The powerful force and speed actually brought up huge whirlpools in the sea water. These vortices struck Garan like snakes from all directions, as if in an instant. It seemed like there were several more opponents attacking Garen at the same time. Clang, clank, clank. After 4 consecutive blocks, the wind from all directions blocked the black spear vortex snake. Crouching tiger light. The slaughterer snorted coldly, and suddenly spun around, churning up a large amount of seawater on the bottom of the sea. Under the huge pressure of the seawater, it actually caused a roaring sound of water flow. Ouch! It was roaring like a tiger, and countless water flows gathered together like a huge transparent tiger and pressed hard on Galen. Thunder shock. The black gun didn't stop at all and hit a triangle again. With a buzz, the entire nearby seawater shook violently, and the temperature rose rapidly. He actually used some unknown ability to directly heat all the water within 10 meters nearby and quickly boiled it. Ignoring the dark energy, it surged towards Garen from all directions, forming a second wave of attacks. Heavenly Punishment Spear. With the final blow, the black gun was like an angry black dragon in the hands of the killer, rushing towards Garen fiercely. With the brighter red light in the eyes of the killer, the black gun fired out with a sneer, and its power surged astonishingly to more than 3 times the original size. In a short period of time, the slaughterer used 3 powerful abilities in 1 second, forming an overwhelming and terrifying attack. For the first time, Garen understood what a slaughterer was, and how the name slaughterer came about. At this time, standing in the center of the besieged attack and killing move, he clearly felt that he was not fighting a person, but an army. When he makes one move, the opponent can make 3 moves. He can even feel that the ability and power activated simultaneously in one move of the Slayer are far more than just 1 or 2. The crazy undercurrents and undercurrents coming from the surroundings may be virtual or real, strong or weak, varying in severity, turning or straight. Ordinary people would simply not be able to cope with the various distinct forces. Hidden in each undercurrent are several or even a dozen changes and follow UPS. It's not on the same level at all. There was a trace of helplessness on the corner of his mouth. It seems I can't keep it anymore. The thought flashed through his mind, and Garen clenched his swords instantly, holding them with his backhand across his chest. Suddenly, the blade swung out. Divide the sea. Aha! The sword light rippled, and the entire seawater was actually split into 2. Garen stood in the middle, with seawater walls more than 10 meters high on both sides. He was standing in the middle, walking quickly with 2 swords in hand, like a god in the sea, arrogant in the world. The fierceness turned into a white line and rushed towards the fallen massacre. The seawater was cut into a vacuum in an instant, and all previous attacks were in vain. The black spear went from bottom to top, and the galleon went from top to bottom. The 2 of them had no tricks at all, and they were very hard on each other. Boom! The vacuum of the seawater only lasted for a short moment before completely collapsing. Boom! A huge sound wave oscillated between the black gun and the 2 swords. The seabed sand surface where the 2 people were standing collapsed instantly, and a clear ring of shock spread out in all directions with the 2 people as the center. All the surrounding corals, sand, and rocks were stirred and broken, and some crabs and shrimps were directly shocked to death. The slaughterer snorted coldly, took the gun off his hands, flicked the chain at the end, and whipped it towards Garen like a whip. The spear technique instantly turned into the whip technique. But at this moment, a blood stain suddenly appeared in the middle of his chest, and blood slowly seeped out from his chest. Garen quickly retreated, avoiding the whip, and looked at the massacre from a distance. I'm sorry, it seems I'm stronger. He held both swords behind his back. Really, the massacre touched the blood marks on his chest. It is true that his abilities and moves are complex, diverse, and extremely powerful, but his physical fitness is still inferior to his opponent. Although the gap is not big, it still makes him feel a little incredible. He was obviously weaker than his opponent in terms of strength, so he was slightly injured in the previous battle. But although Garen's strength was strong, he was still faster. It's interesting the red light in the massacrer's eyes extinguished. Originally I just planned to play casually. He reached out and threw the black gun forward. Click. The black gun actually broke into dozens of sections, floating around him. My muscles can superimpose force and supply 53 moves at the same time, the slaughterer slowly explained. In other words, I can launch the same attack just now, 53 times in one moment. He slowly held the two broken spears with both hands, and with a flick of his hand, the fluctuation of the water flow actually caused the remaining dozens of broken spears to swing together, as if there were dozens of arms holding the gun body. It looks extremely weird. What makes you so confident that you dare to challenge me head-on? Garen's expression became solemn. 53 superpositions. If what the other party says is true, then you are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1187. Before the thought could pass through his mind, Garen suddenly stepped back, and a black line suddenly appeared across the spot where he originally stood. It was a silent sneak attack from a broken gun. Garen's eyes deepened. Come again. He jerked forward. The wind ahead. The sword light shot out with a swish, turning into a white pillar and crashing into the opponent. This double sword merges into one, and its power is twice as strong as the previous one. The massacre also took it slightly seriously. Run, gun. The dozens of gun sections suspended around him all shook and gathered together to form a black metal shield. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and the gun, shield, and sword smashed together. Garen's body turned and he moved away like a fish. The two undercurrent attacks launched by the slaughterer at the same time were in vain. He stood there and frowned at Garen's retreating figure. What is this? A test. He knew the news of Garen's challenge in advance, so he waited where he was. But now that the opponent has withdrawn without any results, it is obviously just a test and has no real intention of determining the outcome. Both sides know that no matter who has their true strongest power, they have not used it. So if this battle actually goes on, it's really hard to tell who will win and who will lose. Sir, a silver diver swam over. Do you want to give chase? No need, there are too many rubbish peeking around. The slaughterer raised his hand. We haven't found anything, let's evacuate first. Clear. After waiting for his subordinates to leave, the red light in the slaughterer eyes lit up again. He turned around and looked at the black submarine slowly approaching on the bottom of the sea. There was a hint of sarcasm. Galen climbed onto the cruise ship and was supported on the deck by two agents. The wet water on his body naturally slid down the surface of the diving suit. Sir, you are injured, an agent exclaimed, looking at the blood mark on Garen's back, covering his mouth. It's okay. Garen pulled off his hood and shook the water from his hair. Arrange a return trip for me and we'll leave immediately. This minor injury doesn't matter. Okay. The female agent saw the blood marks on Garen's back healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her eyes almost popped out of her head. She stammered a reply and ran away quickly. Thinking back to the battle with the slaughterer just now. It's interesting, the corners of Garen's mouth curved slightly. He originally thought that there was nothing in this world that could threaten him, so he planned to take a good rest. Unexpectedly, an unknown Poseidon appeared first, and now the Slayer's strength was somewhat beyond his expectation. Should we kill the slaughterer directly? Garen thought while stroking his chin. He basically knows the strength of the opponent, but his true strongest power has not yet been used, and the strength of using soul power to forcibly increase one level has not yet been shown. Once he uses his full strength and reaches the level of extraordinary power, his strength will still be higher. Several times stronger than now. Enough to defeat and kill the massacre in an instant. But it seems that guy also has some trump card. The threshold for extraordinary power in this world is too high, so it's really troublesome that he can't close the gap. He is at the level of the mecha world where he can destroy the planet with one hand, and he is a true demon king. If the rules of this world were not too abnormal, it would be possible for him to get impatient and destroy the planet with a slap. After all, for a demon king level soul ring, the soul power alone is powerful enough to condense into a physical form. The speed at which his strength increases can be called a pervert among perverts. And as the soul power becomes stronger, the speed of each improvement will become faster and faster. Now even with the suppression of the rules of this world, Garen's average physical fitness still reaches a terrifying level of 5 points. The true horror of the Mother River system gradually became apparent. It has great adaptability in any world, which is reflected here. It can almost perfectly fit the rules of entering the new universe, thereby obtaining the apex level power, and then on this basis, use the soul ring to forcibly upgrade the level. Reach a higher level of sublimation. This is where the Mother River system is most powerful. Garen understood this now. After changing my clothes, I went into the cabin restaurant to rest. Food and drinks were already prepared. The entire cruise ship had started to turn back due to a special failure. Originally, the entire cruise ship was specially arranged because of Galen. "You actually went to challenge the massacre," a voice came from the entrance of the restaurant. Nine-tailed Fox and Liwa followed him into the restaurant, staring at Garen with unwavering expressions. "Didn't I tell you to stay at the headquarters to protect everyone? Do you know how dangerous and harmful it will be to everyone if you leave without permission?" The nine-tailed fox strode up to Garen and slammed the table. "Isn't this okay?" Garen said lazily. "What if the slaughterer doesn't fight you and goes directly to our comrades in the headquarters? Who will be responsible if something goes wrong?" The nine-tailed fox was obviously really angry. "Axu and the others are all here at the headquarters. If something happens, can you take the responsibility?" "Don't worry, it's okay. Didn't I arrange someone to protect them when I left?" Garen didn't care. "The target of the massacre is not us, and the attention is not on us at all." He picked up a piece of pastry and popped it into his mouth to eat. Still eating. With a snap, the nine-tailed fox slapped the pastry in Garen's hand to the ground. Her chest was rising and falling violently, and she looked unusually hot. "No organization. No discipline. I can't even arrange a small thing for you. What's the use of keeping someone like you? What else can you do besides wasting everyone's resources?" "Hey," Xiao Xiao Liwa tugged at her sleeves, but the nine-tailed fox threw her away. "Don't worry." Garen glanced at the knocked pastry, didn't take it seriously, and picked up another piece. "Have I wasted your resources?" He felt that the nine-tailed fox was obviously venting its anger, as if it had encountered something frustrating somewhere else, and it just happened to be venting out on him. "The cruise ship you are on now, what you are eating and using now, isn't it a waste?" the nine-tailed fox sneered. "This seems to be the power of the National Security Bureau," Garen said slowly. "Why do you think they value you so much? It's not that we are helping you behind the scenes. Why would they value you as a teenager? After all, a large part of your current resources belong to all of us." Okay, just stop talking." Liwa couldn't stand it anymore and quickly grabbed her. "Are you helping me from behind?" Garen smiled. "It seems you still don't understand the real situation." He picked up an apple, put it under his nose and smelled it. "Do you want a fight?" The air in the restaurant suddenly turned cold, as if it had suddenly returned from warm spring to cold winter. A cold and cold killing intent emitted from Garen's body, steaming up and permeating every part of the restaurant. Nine-tailed fox and Liwa couldn't help but shudder. Then I suddenly remembered that the man in front of me had just challenged the massacre and escaped unscathed. Now it seems that there is no damage, and it can still send out such strong murderous intent. The nine-tailed fox's heart trembled. The anger caused by something before was suddenly poured on his head like a bucket of cold water. She took a deep breath, raised her hand and looked at her arm. Her skin was covered with dense pimples, which were goosebumps. They would only appear suddenly when a person instinctively encounters a great threat. So many goosebumps. A stream of cold currents poured into her brain, reminding her that the man in front of her had a strong sense of threat. She glanced at Pear Blossom. This equally strong companion's pupils were constricted at this moment. Although he was still standing in his original posture, his body was obviously tense and he was ready to take action at any time. At this time, the nine-tailed fox suddenly remembered that since the meeting until now, Garen's strength seems to have never really leaked. "Are you calmer?" Garen took a sip of red wine from the glass and gently threw the apple in his other hand. The nine-tailed fox didn't know what tone to use in reply, and the ever-excited mood also cooled down under the cold current. "If you just keep talking, everything will be fine," Liwa advised from the side. "We are all companions." She motioned for the other waiters to step back, leaving only the three of them in the restaurant. Pulling the nine-tailed fox to sit down, she looked at Garen opposite. "Axu is missing." Garen's expression was startled at first. Then it got cold. "I was still on the phone with her yesterday. She was the one who disappeared last night." Rika interrupted him. "Sorry, there is a reason why Wen Zhen is so excited." Liwa closed her eyes and recalled. "Wen Zhen and I searched for it all night and heard the news that you came here to challenge the massacre. That's why she is so angry. I hope you can understand." Garen ignored her and took out his cell phone to call Kong Xingxiu directly. The phone rang slowly, and the waiting voice continued again and again. 4 times passed, 8 times passed, and more than 10 times passed, but still no one answered. Garen's expression grew colder as no one answered. Liwa took out her lighthouse communicator, unfolded an invisible layer of signal shielding interference, and gently placed the lighthouse communicator on the table. "Perhaps you don't know yet. Although the souls of our time travelers can have the characteristic of infinite time traveling, if we time travel too many times, it will also be washed out." Whitewash. This was the first time Garen heard this statement. "What do you mean?" He didn't stop and started dialing again, this time to Kong Yuan. "Although the soul will not die, it will continue to lose its own memory and soul due to the interference of time and space and the forcible distortion of various radiation energies. Until it finally loses everything and becomes a blank soul, starting from scratch. And the more times you travel and resurrect, the more serious this phenomenon will become." Liwa explained in a low voice. As for Ashui, she didn't travel through time 3 or 4 times as she said, but more than 8 times. 8 times is the limit. The nine-tailed fox finally spoke and continued in a low voice from the side, "She is with me, from beginning to end, she is with me. She can no longer die. Already half of the world's memory has been washed away, and then she dies. She may not even be able to remember who I am." Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1188. 8 times. Garen gasped. Kong Xingxiu, who looked like just an ordinary person, had actually traveled through time and reincarnation more than 8 times. The chill in the restaurant also slowly dissipated. This time, he was indeed too rash. He did not expect that besides the massacre, he would still have the power to target Kong Xingxiu. "The most important thing now is to get Ashui back," Liwa said quickly. At this time, Garen put down the phone again, and Kong Yuan didn't answer the call. This made him feel a little uneasy. "We searched all the places we needed to look for, and finally came to the sea to look for you," Liwa sighed. I hope you can understand Wenzhen's emotional loss. I was careless this time. Garen frankly admitted that it was his fault. Through what he learned from these time travelers, he understood that both his talent attribute points and the Mother River system he traveled through were almost unique. There were too few people who practiced the Mother River system, and almost no one had succeeded in it. What a name! And things like talent attribute points are even more perverted, and can help ordinary people get through the initial weak stage as quickly as possible. This has also led to the fact that up to now, the strength of Nine-Tailed Fox and others has reached its peak and has stagnated, but because his soul limit is too high and the soul ring continues to nourish him, he has reached an extremely terrifying point. With an average attribute of more than 5 points, even a mammoth can be easily knocked down in front of him, which is basically equivalent to a humanoid Tyrannosaurus. The ordinary ingredients are almost the same as flour for him. It collapses at the first touch. Sitting upright in his seat, Garen's entire figure was much taller and stronger than a year ago. The whole person is almost the size of 2 nine-tailed foxes, and the white suit he puts on gives him an unusually tall and strong posture. Is there any information about the last place where Shui disappeared? Of course, I have asked the strongest pursuit experts to check and record the situation at the scene. The nine-tailed fox had completely calmed down. Although his tone was still cold, it was not as out of control as before. Give me the information, Garen said directly in a tone that left no room for doubt. The massacre is outside, I'll go ask him directly. The nine-tailed fox was slightly startled. I have fought against the slaughterer, and the gap is huge. I am no match for him. Even if I join forces with you, it will be the same. It doesn't matter, Garen grinned, exuding an inexplicable confidence. The nine-tailed fox and Liwa, who wanted to speak, were immediately speechless. The border of Sri Lanka, the Yahan forest area. On a winding and rugged small road between large and lush mangroves. Woo! Urawa rode a black heavy motorcycle, bending forward and galloping forward. He was wearing a tight black leather suit and brown windshield, focusing on the road ahead. His sister, Yuriji, was behind him, with her arms around his waist. The motorcycle was speeding, making a whining engine sound, passing through the large red forest at lightning speed, picking up a large number of fallen leaves on the road and flying forward. The gloomy sky was covered with dense clouds, and the entire sky was gray-white. From time to time, thunder rumbled and rolled by. The motorcycle drove through a curve, and a thick log suddenly appeared on the road in front of it, completely blocking the entire path forward. The motorcycle slowly slowed down and stopped in front of the log. Urawa motioned for his sister to get out of the car without saying a word, but looked around with vigilant eyes. His right hand slowly pulled out the long knife worn at his waist. Uraja nodded silently to him, and also drew out the long knife on her back. The two of them slowly approached the woods on both sides in tacit agreement, one on the left and the other on the right. Boom! Suddenly there was a violent explosion at Urawa's feet. Violent fire shot up into the sky, and the ground was broken by the explosion. A large cloud of red flames and smoke poured out, violently throwing Urawa into the air, spinning and flying sideways to hit the nearby thick tree trunk. High explosives, Urawa felt a sharp pain all over his body, and his vision suddenly blurred. The knife in his hand was blown off without knowing when, leaving only half of it. You really look up to me. This power is enough to kill even an elephant, no matter how strong his sword skills are. Facing such a sudden attack, even if the savior has a physical bonus, he can only be seriously injured immediately. Urawa tried his best to widen his blurred vision. His body rolled down from the tree trunk and finally stabilized. In the dim light, he seemed to vaguely see a tall figure slowly walking towards him. Bang! 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 It was the sound of heavy footsteps. Human! How can there be such heavy footsteps? Urawa lay on his side on the ground, trying to support his body, but he couldn't stand up. He wanted to borrow strength, but was shocked to feel that he was completely weak. The power of the savior that was absolutely effective in the past has completely failed. Brother, he seemed to hear someone calling him. Xiaoji, he stretched out his hand to grab in the direction of the sound, and seemed to have caught something, but the thing immediately became loose. Soon, the tall figure finally walked up to Yureva, and he saw clearly that it was a huge robot more than 2 meters tall. It has a triangular head, and its body is as hard and strong as a tank. The robot raised one foot and stepped hard on Yureva's back. Puff. A sharp pain. Yurewa's eyes were filled with blood, and he didn't know anything anymore. Wow! The raindrops fell slowly, and the cold rain slid down Yurewa's cheeks. At night, a petite figure walked up to him and squatted down. Turn Yureva's body over and pat his face gently. Hey, wake up. Yurewa did not move at all. The blood on his body was washed away by the rain and slowly flowed out from under him, dyeing the nearby grass pale red. The petite figure did not hold an umbrella, and he was soaked by the heavy rain. Seeing this, he pressed Yureva's heart hard and leaned down to listen to the heartbeat. Found alive. The man stood up and looked around, but couldn't find anyone else who could help. He had to squat down again and lift Yureva on his shoulders with difficulty. He began to walk step by step towards the road outside the woods. What? Yureva is missing too. Galen stood in the restaurant, holding the phone and frowning as he listened to the National Security Bureau agent's report. When did this happen? Just now, our contact with the Yurewa brothers and sisters was suddenly interrupted. At the same time, all the contact equipment on his body was disconnected. Satellite surveillance found that the motorcycle he was riding was left on the road, and there seemed to be traces of explosions around it. The female agent was specially arranged by the National Security Bureau to deliver classified intelligence to Galen. She spoke concisely and clearly, without any waste. Only we and the National Security Bureau know about Yurewa's whereabouts. Is there someone inside? Liwa stood up and said in a deep voice. The problem is serious. Garen nodded, his face a little ugly. Yurewa is the most critical character. This scene did not appear in the original plot. Now Ashwi is also missing. Could it be done by the same group of people? The nine-tailed fox stood up and asked. Her mood had completely stabilized at this time. It's impossible for the vulture to do such a thing. Maybe it's the other two forces, Galen guessed, who should be the Red Country or the Black Federation. The Black Federation is more likely, the nine-tailed fox replied. They are ambitious and have always wanted to provoke a war. As one of the four cornerstones, Yurewa is now known to many high-level officials in the world. The goal is too obvious. But how could Ashwi be targeted as well? Go out first and then talk. Garen strode out of the restaurant, pushed the door open and came to the deck. He held the side of the ship with both hands. The vast blue water outside continued to stir, and ships could be faintly seen sailing in the distance. The two nine-tailed foxes followed them out. They started, Liwa whispered. You escaped early. It seems that their attack list did not include you. The target this time should mainly be the massacre. The participating forces include the vultures, the Black Federation, and people from the Red Country who must be hiding. Nine-tailed fox confirmed. The question now is, first we need to find out who kidnapped Ashwi and Yurewa. Garen frowned. Toot toot. Suddenly Galen's cell phone rang again. He pressed the connect button. The latest news, our surveillance found that Yurewa was rescued by a girl and disappeared after entering a small valley. Now we have sent people to pick him up, but we have not found Yureja's whereabouts. We suspect the person who attacked them. It's very possible that the real target is Yuriji. The intelligence officer's words made the three of Garen feel somewhat relieved. Yurevar is the key to the plot. Once something unexpected happens to him, everyone will completely lose control of the plot. Moreover, Garen has taught Yurevar for so long that it is a lie to say that he has no feelings. Yurewa must be found immediately. I suspect that his attacker may be related to Oshui's disappearance, the nine-tailed fox said firmly. There is a problem with Urawa, but I think we should solve the immediate problem first. Garen slowly pulled out the two long knives he was wearing. Woo woo. At this time, a large number of white speedboats were gradually approaching from all sides of the cruise ship. On each speedboat were one or two masked men in white military uniforms. They were holding weapons such as firearm barrels and aimed directly at the cruise ship. Among them, the people on three yachts are particularly eye-catching. They are three black all-metal robots that are more than 2 meters high. The robots have triangular heads and a white crab pattern engraved on their chests. The back bounces away from the densely packed launch tubes like a hedgehog. It's quite a scene. The nine-tailed fox pulled out a white ribbon. It seems we have to abandon ship. One person at a time. Okay, Liwa pulled out her pistol and strode towards the bow of the ship. There was already a female agent there who was at war with the other party, and gunfire started sporadically. Garen held two swords in his hands, jumped slightly, landed on the side of the ship, squatted down, and compressed his whole body like a spring. Tisk. He ejected directly and landed hard on a white speedboat that happened to be passing by. With two swipes of the sword, the two men holding guns above were chopped off and fell into the sea. Be careful to stay alive. Be sure to ask who sent him, Garen shouted loudly. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1189. Bang. Garen punched a speedboat man that was passing by and knocked over the side. He turned over and changed to another speedboat and rushed directly towards the other speedboat man. The speedboat quickly passed between the two enemy ships. The sword flashed. After two swipes, the four enemies in white covered their necks and fell into the sea. Too weak. Garen quickly sheathed his sword, then suddenly opened his eyes and blocked it with his sword. Dang. A bullet as long as his index finger was deflected by him, and a bullet mark appeared on the blade. Armor-piercing bullet. Garen was not surprised but overjoyed. He turned around and looked at the target of the shot in the distance. It was one of the three robots he saw earlier. This is interesting. It's boring if it's too weak. He twisted the speedboat and rushed directly towards the opponent. Dozens of gun barrels behind the robot fired at the same time, with a roar like thunder, and a large amount of flames erupted overwhelmingly. The violent rumbling sound was endless, causing the seawater near the entire sea area to tremble slightly. A large number of armor-piercing bullets mixed together and flew towards Galen at the same time. The huge recoil even made the robot and the speedboat under it retreat violently. How fast the bullets are, especially with this special barrel, the powerful burst at the same time, the kinetic energy and speed generated are far beyond what ordinary small pistols can match. When the nine-tailed fox and others saw the scene in the distance, their hearts suddenly reached their peak. An attack of this magnitude would be fine if it were ordinary bullets, but the mixture of armor-piercing bullets, artillery shells, and ordinary bullets would make even the nine-tailed fox unconfident to attack them all. He can only dodge, but at sea, Garen is standing on a speedboat. Once he dodges, he will definitely have no place to stand, and he may fall into a dangerous situation of being surrounded and suppressed. Save people. Almost at the same time, this thought flashed through the minds of Nine-Tailed Fox and Liwa. Garen is not a savior, nor is he one of the four cornerstones. He does not have extraordinary power or special abilities. No matter how advanced his swordsmanship is, facing this kind of absolute power, it is simply not something that humans can control, and he is absolutely powerless. Galen stood on the speedboat. For a moment, he felt that his surroundings had slowed down. Bullets were gradually flying in front of him, gunshots and shouts in the distance, the roar of the sea, and the shooting and exclamations of the secret agents on the cruise ship. There were also a large number of ordinary boat passengers screaming in terror. This time's concentrated fire was completely different from what Yureva faced before. At first, Yureva only faced a machine gun, but now he faced artillery shells, armor-piercing bullets, and special bullets. Moreover, the firing speed has been obviously modulated, and the power and speed are obviously more than doubled. It was obvious that his opponent had investigated his situation before taking action, and that was why he would attack with weapons of this level. If the difficulty Urawa faced at the beginning was 1, then the difficulty Garen faced now was 10. This is to deal with him as a main battle tank. It's really troublesome, a thought flashed through Garen's mind, and he no longer had any time to think about it. Finally, at this moment, the trump card that he had not used in the battle with the Slayer, forcibly promoted by his soul power, burst out in him. Garen's whole body seemed to glow with a faint white luster the moment the cannonball hit him. Aha! The two swords were crossed and raised in front of him, and a soul power aura like a flame slowly burned on Garen's body. If there is someone who can see the soul power watching the battle at this moment, they will definitely find that his body seems to be burning with a layer of white light flames, and the white flames are constantly floating, like countless white streamers floating upward. The wind of reversal. Before he finished speaking, the speedboat under Garen's feet shattered and fell into pieces, and he shot out in an instant, jumped up, and shot towards the robot not far away in a parabola. The speed was so fast that even the gun and bullets were slightly delayed and failed to catch his after-image. The two swords merged into one, like a high-speed rotating sword wheel, and Garen slashed him from above. Boom! The robot exploded. The moment the knife mark cut open the outer shell of the robot, the entire machine turned into a huge flame, bursting out in all directions, and the huge heat and light directly enveloped Galleon. The fireball with a diameter of 5 to 6 meters even pushed the surrounding sea surface down by more than 1 meter. The fire shocked the nine-tailed fox and the others, but the other attacker did not hesitate at all and continued to shoot with high intensity. While distracted, Liwa's shoulder was suddenly injured. The nine-tailed fox also faced sneak attacks from two other robots. Fortunately, she was faster and dodged quickly. And it seemed that only the robot that attacked Garen was the most powerful, and the speed and power of the other bullets and shells were far inferior to that one. This made her feel lucky, but also made her more worried about Garen's safety. The flames slowly dissipated, and the wreckage of the blown-up speedboat was still burning on the sea, making a clicking sound. A dark figure suddenly emerged from the edge of the sea. It was Garen. His whole body was burnt black, his clothes were in tatters, and only the handles of the two knives in his hands were left, which looked like they had been rolled in soot a few times. So gloomy, Garen wiped his face, wiping off part of the blackness on his face, revealing his original face. Such an embarrassed image immediately made his face look obviously troubled. The other party is too cruel. There is actually such a move. If he hadn't reached an average physical fitness of more than 5 points now, it is estimated that the self-destruction would kill him. The other party is definitely someone who knows him well, otherwise he wouldn't be so thorough in his favorite close combat method. There was no chance for him to turn around and engage in close combat. This proves that the opponent clearly knows that close combat is ineffective against me. As a robot alloy with a tough shell, he can be so sure that close combat is absolutely ineffective against me. Obviously the opponent knows my combat power very well. With a crash, Garen jumped up from the water, flying diagonally and hitting a piece of wreckage of a speedboat not far away. The whole person immediately took advantage of the force and shot out like an arrow. Whoosh! The remaining sword light in his hand flashed. The driver of a speedboat was knocked directly into the water. Another person even plopped himself into the sea. He was so frightened that he dived desperately, fearing that he could not run fast enough. "This monster," came the horrified voice of the attacker. All the attacking speedboats quickly began to evacuate, leaving dozens of corpses behind without leaving a harsh word, and then retreated directly. Everyone was at least tens of meters away from Garen, for fear that he would catch up, and did not look back. He ran away desperately. Not even high explosives can hurt him. Inside a submarine at the bottom of the sea. In the darkness, a figure facing the surveillance screen said in a low voice. Looking at Garen standing on the speedboat almost unscathed. What countermeasures are there? Another person asked in a low voice in the darkness. Isn't this guy the same as the four cornerstones? Maybe it's a new cornerstone, the figure in front of the screen asked doubtfully. The original mass murderers were just like him. High explosives were basically ineffective against them. Impossible. The cornerstone will have unique divine patterns, but he doesn't have it, the man in the darkness replied. What plan? Let's go to No 3, the man in the darkness whispered. No matter how strong an individual is, there will be times when he is powerless. 2. Is everything okay? The nine-tailed fox Liwa and Garen met together, and the three of them returned to the cruise ship. At this moment, the cruise ship did not suffer major damage, but there were holes and burning in some places. The remaining special agents were quickly cooperating with the crew. Put out fires. The battle is basically over. Some passengers boldly popped their heads out to check the situation. It's okay. I wasn't really hit by the explosion, I was just brushed aside. Garen shook his head to show that he was fine, but his eyes fell into the distance. His movements also caused the two nine-tailed foxes to also cast their gaze to the sea level in the distance. What are you looking at? Liwa shut up as soon as she asked her question. Buzz. At this time, a small ship appeared in the distance on the sea. It was fish-shaped, all white, and had a silver crab logo on the side. On the side of the ship stood a robot with a white metal shell. Its 3-meter-high body was holding a person in one hand. A beautiful woman with a slender figure and long hair. The woman's neck was pinched, and she was struggling in the air. Her hands kept beating the robot's arms, but to no avail. Axe you. The nine-tailed fox's voice instantly turned cold. Garen and Liwa also recognized the struggling woman, who was Kong Xingxiu. Although I was mentally prepared for Kong Xingxiu to be arrested in the original plot, the problem is that the arrestor is not the massacre and others in the plot, but a completely unknown force. What is their purpose? Why can they understand their situation so well? All of this is unknown. Whether there is an internal conspiracy or not, at this moment, the three of Galen have some doubts. At this time, the attackers' speedboats fleeing in the distance also boarded the small ship and got in one by one from the rear and stern. Want to save someone? A rich man's voice came from afar. Then come to me. Juggernaut, you are only allowed to come alone. Otherwise. Tear. The robot actually tore off Kong Xingxiu's white dress, revealing her naked body wearing nothing underneath. Bai Huahua's body swayed a little brightly from a distance, and Garen could even hear the exclamations, commotion, and swallowing sounds of the passengers behind him. Hey, it's interesting. He threw away the broken swords casually. They were of little use anymore. You go back. Without looking back, he ordered, I'll go meet him alone. They obviously know us well, be careful, the nine-tailed fox said solemnly. Are you sure? Liwa asked in a low voice. I don't know. Garen smiled, jumped lightly, jumped into the sea like a petrel, and shot towards the distant ship like a swimming fish. The speed was actually only a little slower than the previous speedboat. Behind him draw a clear white line. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1190. Watching Garen's back as he left. It is indeed the Black Federation, Liwa said bitterly. They are targeting the Slan Kingdom. As long as they can kill either the Slaughterer or Garen, it will be a strategic victory for them. Damn it! With a bang, she punched the fence hard. Let's go back, the nine-tailed fox said calmly, seemingly not worried at all about Garen's departure. What? Don't we just ignore galleons? Liwa said in disbelief. Listen to me. The nine-tailed fox turned around and walked towards the interior of the cruise ship without explaining. Rika was left with an expression of disbelief. Yureva slowly opened his eyes. I found myself lying in a wooden mahogany cabin, sleeping on a wooden bed in the middle of the room, covered with a thick white quilt with a slight fragrance. Outside the side window, bright sunlight was projected in. It seemed to be the light projected from the gaps in the leaves of the forest. It was mottled and fine, and was still shaking. There is a heater in the room, which is very warm. There is a pot of water being boiled on the table next to it. It is an electric kettle. It sounds like it is about to boil. You're awake. A pleasant voice came from the door. Yureva felt a splitting headache and his whole body was lightheaded. He tried to support his body, but found that he was unable to move at all. Cough. He opened his mouth to speak, but found that his throat seemed to be unable to make any sound, and he could only hear the sound of thin airflow. The airflow passed through the throat, but it did not vibrate the vocal cords at all. You have severe heavy metal poisoning in your body. The voice walked from the door to the bed, put down a glass of water, and suddenly a beautiful and delicate girl with black hair and ponytail appeared in front of Yureva. When I found you, you were severely dehydrated and your skin was wrinkled, like that of a little old man. If I didn't have the right medicine here, your life would have been lost there. The girl does not have any luxurious and exquisite clothes, only a white hairpin pins up the hair on the right side. She looks gentle and virtuous, giving people the temperament of Xiajiabiu. Ho ho ho. Yureva wanted to speak, but sadly found that he could neither move nor speak, and could only occasionally turn his head slowly. It seems that the injury is serious this time. The spine on your back was broken into 5 sections. It will take at least 10 days to heal. The girl pulled a chair to sit beside the bed and explained in a low voice. She seemed to be speaking in Sri Lanka, but among there are 1 or 2 red words mixed in, and it seems that he is not a native of the country. In addition, there is a serious loss of blood energy and severe injuries. You need to fully rest and recuperate. You won't be able to think about it for more than a month. She lifted the quilt and began to carefully examine the injuries on Yurewa's body. Only then did Yureva realize that the clothes he was wearing were actually a new set of white pajamas, special pajamas with gray stripes. A bit like the uniforms worn by patients in a hospital. What he couldn't accept was that the girl unbuttoned his shirt skillfully and pressed her cold hands on his chest and abdomen, as if she was checking something. I know you have a lot of doubts, the girl whispered. I know you are not an ordinary person. I also know that many people are looking for you everywhere and searching you, but what I want to tell you is that among these people searching for you, there are people who want to do you harm. She reached out and started tugging on Yureva's pants. Your poisoning this time should have been caused by someone inside them. Otherwise, you wouldn't be unable to use your power at the critical moment. Ho ho. Ho ho ho. Hey, hey, what do you want to do? Where are you extending your hand? Yureva stared at the girl's little hand without blinking. He wanted to stop it, but was obviously unable to do so. At this moment, his focus is obviously not on listening to these inside stories, but on keeping his virginity for more than 10 years. Yureva felt a chill in her heart, and her pants were pulled down directly. He obviously felt that his lower body was naked and he was not wearing any underwear. His mood was as complex as a volcano erupting, and nothing could be restrained from spewing out. Vinegar, sadness, helplessness, mixed with a little bit of excitement. It's not like I've never seen him before. Why are you so shy? The girl said openly, and began to check the injuries on Yureva's lower body. The thigh was broken, bloody, and a large piece of flesh was obviously missing in some places, but it was all well stitched and bandaged by her. I have seen your whole body countless times during the past few days when you were in coma. There is nothing to be ashamed of, the girl said calmly. After checking, she lifted up Yurewa's pants. Okay, looks like he's recovering well. Ho 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 ho. Yureva opened her mouth to say something else. You want to ask me who I am? The girl smiled. Don't worry, I won't harm you. Otherwise, I won't save you. He paused. As for the name, there is no point in saying it. It's better not to say anything. After saying that, she turned around and left the wooden house, closed the door, and the footsteps gradually faded away, stepping on the thick leaves, and slowly disappeared. Ho ho. What a ghost. Ho ho. Urawa thought of Zyajah. Zyajah, I hope you are okay. For a moment, he wondered who had poisoned him, why the other party poisoned him, and why he was attacked by an ambush of explosives. It was obvious that there was an insider, otherwise the other party would not have grasped his whereabouts so accurately. And where did Zyajah go? The girl who saved him seems to know a lot of inside information. What is her identity? A series of thoughts mixed together gave him a splitting headache. His already weak body felt a surge of protective fatigue and sleepiness. After a while, he fell asleep again. Puff. A desert island in the Ceylon Sea. Several seals were lazily basking in the sun on the beach. Suddenly, he was startled by the sound of water beside him and raised his head slightly to look. I saw a black head suddenly emerge from the sea water, and then the whole person slowly walked out of the sea, straightened up, and walked to the beach step by step, leaving wet footprints on the golden sand. Garin looked up at the hot sun above his head, and then at the seals lazily lying down on the beach to bask in the sun again. These guys with gray and black fur are obviously lazily basking in the sun. What a hell, Garin muttered. Seals that should only be seen in cold seas are actually basking in the sun in such a tropical area. Isn't it afraid of being heated to death? Seeing that these seals completely regarded him as a harmless creature, Garin didn't bother to pay attention to them. He walked directly to the beach and looked around. This is a small island with lush coconut trees and various clusters of large-leaved shrubs. There is golden fine sand in the middle, which looks very refreshing and simple. Garin watched the ship land on this island from a distance, and then followed it all the way here. But now it seems that it is indeed unlikely that this is a desert island, because looking at the appearance of these seals, it is known that they are not surprised by the appearance of such creatures as humans, and they have obviously become familiar with them and have lost their basic vigilance. It's interesting. He looked into the depths of the island. All the water stains on the body suddenly shook and turned into countless water mist and white mist that slowly evaporated. The white mist that drifted away could be clearly seen in the sunlight. Attention all units. Attention all units. The enemy has entered the edge of the headquarters. All combat units are ready for combat. Alert level, red. In an underground base inside the island, a deep male voice slowly sounded. The entire huge base was like a huge hive. Countless combatants dressed in white rushed out from various departments. A large number of firearms and individual combat equipment were worn on these people. Many of them were semi-mechanical bodies. In the center of the base, in a red culture crystal tube more than 3 meters high, Kong Xingxiu's eyes were closed, floating in the center, her white dress intact. The huge 3-meter-tall robot previously held the naked woman in its hands. The woman was obviously very similar to Kong Xingxiu in appearance, but there were subtle differences in details. If you look closely, you can find that the two are not the same at all. People. Let's do it. This time we will definitely strangle the strongest swordsman of the Slan Kingdom. We can't let the Slan Kingdom have a second Shiva Saka. The cold and low voice of the robot continued to echo in the huge hall. Laugh. 2 huge and sharp meniscus blades popped out from the robot's arms. I felt a very strong wave. The red woman closed her eyes and slowly looked towards the direction outside the base. Yes. I feel it too. The robot turned around and looked in the direction she was facing. On the beach, Garen's whole body was filled with soul power, and his whole body seemed to be burning with countless white flames. The huge soul power fluctuations burned higher and higher, becoming larger and larger, gradually forming a huge phantom of nothingness peacock behind him. At this moment, there is no need to hold back. Because he has already sensed here that there is also the existence of soul power fluctuations. Automatic cannons rose up from between the trees on the island, and large groups of combatants in white military uniform slowly emerged from the forest. Fighting vehicles, helicopters, individual combat scooters. Garen tilted his head and grinned. Raise your right palm. It's a pity that I don't have a knife. He disappeared in an instant. Boom. Countless artillery fires were fired at the same time, and a large number of artillery shells, bullets, armor-piercing bombs, and radiation bombs were released onto the spot where he was standing. The beach exploded instantly, countless sand and dust rose into the sky, and flames, acid, and metal fragments all exploded. Amidst all the gunfire, a shadow rushed straight into the crowd of people in the woods. A large number of people fell over like wheat, the cannons broke, and clear fist marks appeared on the tanks. They were violently scattered and exploded, and some even exploded. No one can resist Garen's advance. This is not a battle at all, but a massacre. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1191. Garen was flashing and jumping all the time, and the gun was basically unable to lock onto his position. After turning on the soul ring to upgrade his level, his speed was even higher at this moment, but the really scariest thing was the kind that seemed to predict attacks. The terrifying body technique. Even if the name completely covers the area, he can suddenly rush out of it and find incredible vitality in the incredible gaps. And her strong physical fitness allowed her to ignore the long-distance aftermath of the explosion. So much so that within a few minutes of the battle, Garen was walking between the battle groups like a leisurely stroll, without any influence at all. This kind of fighting power is countless times stronger than what he had a year ago. Is he still a human being? A soldier driving a distant chariot broke out in a cold sweat. It's just a monster, another soldier said coldly, just treat him as a non-human monster. Don't be distracted and prepare to fire. Yes. Boom. Suddenly, the entire interior of the chariot was dented and deformed, and a clear mark of a fist punched in from the outside. Buzz. A violent vibration spread throughout the entire car body in an instant. Before the two soldiers had time to scream, they fell limply inside the car, convulsing all over and foaming at the mouth, and they were about to die. Outside the car, Garen jumped back and slapped the two cyborg soldiers on the head lightly with both hands. After killing two of them, he fell more than 10 meters away and stood still. At this time, the battlefield on the entire island has almost settled. Fireworks, corpses, and wreckage are everywhere, and the few remaining helicopters are circling and flying away. Garen ignored them. Unlike in the mecha world, he didn't have long-range attack methods, so there was nothing he could do with these helicopters. Of course, he can also use the firearms of these soldiers, but it doesn't matter. After all, it's not easy to catch up and kill these helicopters. They are all heavily armored. General firearms are useless, and they need to master these special weapons. Garen didn't want to go to such trouble. He stepped on a piece of broken metal remains of the chariot and looked around. At this moment, only a dozen people in the battle group of hundreds of people are retreating quickly. The rest are lying on the ground. Some of the corpses are directly ignited by the flames generated by the explosion. They are burning sizzlingly, and the smell of meat and burnt smell wafts out. They are just minor characters. Garen felt a little bored. With his current strength, there is absolutely no point in bullying these little guys. He wanted to go to the lighthouse as soon as possible. He heard from Nine-Tailed Fox and the others that this universe and other nearby universes that the lighthouse can connect to all have the same basic rules. Many of the rules are very similar, such as the rules of physical genes, which are just for supernatural beings. The power, that is, the level of extraordinary power is limited, So many time travelers can carry part of their strength into other worlds, which are different from the world they turned to before. Garen clearly remembered how hard he had to rebuild step by step, constantly adapting to the rules of different universes with hugely different styles, and worked hard to reach an extremely high level. Hey, why didn't I think of hanging around in the nearby universe? He felt sorry for himself and took a step back. Zheng. A blackened crater suddenly appeared under his original position. Oh, super long-range sniper, Garen responded with interest. This distance is almost 3 kilometers. It's really impressive. The bullet was obviously fired from the opposite edge of the island, and the opponent was definitely the most terrifying sniper. Toot. Toot. Suddenly there was a rapid siren sound in the sky. Garen's expression changed, something suddenly sounded, and he quickly moved. Shoot straight ahead. Boom boom boom. In an instant, a series of artillery fire directly followed his figure and pursued him. Every place he had just passed by was immediately blown up by the artillery fire and was filled with deep pits. Long-range artillery coverage and bombardment. A deep male voice sounded from above the island. Boom. Countless artillery fire fell from the sky in an instant, covering hundreds of meters in Garen's area like a ruthless carpet. In an instant, the entire island shook violently, as if the ground on the island was about to fall apart. Dust, flames, tree limbs, and a large amount of debris that was unclear whether it was metal debris or shell debris exploded and splashed everywhere. The entire half of the island shook wildly, and it lasted for several minutes before the artillery fire subsided. Concentrated air burst bomb. The male voice sounded again. Bang. A group of transparent air bombs exploded violently, causing the battlefield that had been turned into a deep pit to explode again, sending up large amounts of soil. All the air is squeezed violently, forming ripples that spread in all directions. Immediately afterwards, air burst bombs were bombarded one after another. This kind of air burst bomb is extremely powerful. It can instantly squeeze the air and form a huge powerful shock wave. The superimposed coverage and lethality are very terrifying. Not to mention humans, even tanks may be directly shaken and deformed if hit. Within the base, even the sword master cannot survive in the face of indiscriminate carpet bombing, the robot said coldly. As long as he is human, as long as he is flesh and blood. What's wrong with a body of flesh and blood? The red-blooded man next to him said angrily. With a metal frame like yours, you can't even enjoy the greatest happiness of human beings. What's the point of living? It's really boring. It's over. The robot ignored the woman. In this world, this universe, because extraordinary power is too limited, there is no way to have a good way to fight against artillery fire. The same goes for Garen. If he could use extraordinary power, he could kill such low-tech troops in one breath, but unfortunately, he couldn't. Since we can't do that, we can only bear the other side's indiscriminate bombing head-on. At this moment, he was hiding in a deep cave, holding a black metal wrench in his hand that seemed to be the remains of a chariot. The black metal plate that was half a palm thick was more like a metal brick. Twisted, it formed a huge metal rod that was more than 1 meter long. The giant's stick is wider than others, and it doesn't look like a weapon, but more like a shield. He was in a pit more than 1 meter above the ground. He was hit from the front and his face looked a little pale. The gunfire outside seemed to have finally stopped. Garen then slowly exhaled. Sure enough, we can't resist the dense artillery shells head-on right now. He was hit by a cannonball from the front, and his whole body was shoved into a deep pit behind him, and his internal organs were immediately injured. The artillery fire in this universe seems to be stronger than that of the Earth and the secret martial world, or the gunpowder is stronger, causing him to make errors in judgment. But the good thing is that after he was hit by this cannonball, he just used its impact to avoid the attacks of the other cannonballs. It finally stopped. We can't resist the mechanical troops so hard next time. This is a universe without any extraordinary power. Garen listened carefully to the sounds outside. When it was confirmed that it had completely stopped, he calmed down his body temperature and heartbeat, and slowly got out of the pit. Whoosh! The moment he emerged from the pit, his entire body turned into a shadow and rushed towards the other end of the island. The other party obviously hadn't reacted yet, and no one would have thought how Galleon survived that kind of covering bombing that was absolutely impossible to avoid. Before he had time to react, he saw a shadow on the monitor heading straight towards the base. It is too late to cover the artillery fire, which also requires locking and cooling time, and cannot be fired directly immediately. Garen leaped and jumped in the coconut forest, moving forward as fast as lightning. Surveillance cameras and automatic cannons around him could not keep up with the speed of his movement. Before the camera could turn around, the man had disappeared. The trees continued to retreat rapidly in front of Garen's eyes, and the sound of mechanical cannons kept clicking on both sides. Bang 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 bang. The cannons began to fire indiscriminately. It was obvious that they couldn't catch him, so they simply just hit him randomly. As long as they hit one shot, or as long as Garen was afraid, he could slow down his speed and regain control of him. Position. The broken edge of the black metal plate was extremely sharp. Garen held it in his hand and sharply cut it, cutting 3 coconut trees on the right in half. At the same time, he also directly smashed an automatic cannon between the trees. He turned his hand to block the metal plate on the left side, and immediately blocked several machine gun bullets. The bullets embedded themselves in the metal plate, causing Garen to tremble slightly. What a huge impact! It seems that the other party is going to fight with all his strength. He understood clearly, and increased his speed even more. The woods quickly passed by on both sides, and soon the helicopters that had escaped earlier appeared in front of them again. Bang 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 bang. The 2 cannons below the heavy helicopter roared, and countless bullets and shells were fired at Galen, pulled into several clear bullet chains. However, this kind of aiming intention was too obvious. Garen just made a casual judgment and continued to move forward easily through the gap in the bullet chain without being affected at all. The aiming speed of the helicopter cannon could not keep up with his movement intention. Rattlesnake! Someone yelled on the ground. It seemed to be towards the helicopter. Garen even heard the roar. Chi-chi! Suddenly, several lines of fire shot out from under the helicopter. They were missiles. But the distance was too close and the aiming intention was too obvious. Garen just rolled and jumped to avoid the bombing range. Boom boom boom. The woods burned. Garen circled around, avoided the missiles, and rushed directly into a small silver-white metal house below the helicopter. Bang! The metal door was kicked away by Garen, and it was slammed out of the door and stuck against the wall of the room. Inside is a reception room that seems to be used for resting, and it is obvious that there is a very thick black metal door on the ground. There is also an advanced electronic detection instrument above, which seems to be used to detect the identity of the visitor. In addition, there were 2 cyborgs in the room, trembling with guns pointed at Garen. He cursed loudly and didn't know what he was shouting. It was obvious that they were very frightened. I can sense you're scared, Garen grinned. The room here is obviously a high-strength defense facility, and ordinary machine guns cannot penetrate it. When he kicked the door open just now, he used his maximum strength to kick it away. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1192. Go to hell, a semi-mechanized guy finally couldn't help but shoot. Puff 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 puff. The sound of the mini submachine gun was very small, but it did not hit even a single figure. Comparing their movement reactions and speed, Garen's movements were almost like teleportation. At such a close distance, it was just a forward leap. In an instant, he did not even blink, and he passed through several meters of space. His hand was more than 1 meter long. The thick metal plate cut through the waists of the two people. The two men, whose muzzles were still spitting fire, suddenly slipped half of their bodies to the ground, but they were still screaming in terror. The sound lasted for 2 seconds before stopping. Bullets were ricocheting around the city, but they were all slapped away by Garen. The surprisingly wide metal plate jingled and directly embedded all the ricocheting bullets on the plate, easily and effortlessly. Looking down at the underground facility. Why do these guys like to build bases underground? Garen touched his chin. Do you want to go down there? He doesn't have very strong extraordinary power now. If it continues like this, if the people inside use some terrorist weapons of destruction like nuclear bombs, they will all die together. In a confined space, the power, tisk tisk. Needless to say, he is destined to die now. The thermal weapons in this world are obviously much more powerful, and there are too many restrictions on extraordinary power here. After he forcibly upgraded to one level at this moment, the extraordinary power he gained was mainly reflected in his speed and reflexes. After his improvement, the speed of his sword skills has at least doubled. This is the truly terrifying thing. When the sword blade is slashing, it will naturally follow the airflow and the Earth's magnetic field trajectory that are most conducive to speed. Everything is almost perfect. But none of these improvements can face the indiscriminate bombardment of artillery shells head-on. The only way to deal with that kind of attack is to dodge and resist. It's a bit difficult to handle. Garen didn't want to put himself in a crisis situation. After knowing that this universe is connected to the rest of the Beacon universe, he can crush any opponent at will as long as he waits for time in this universe until his physical fitness reaches the terrifying peak limit. There is no need to fight with the enemy in such a hurry. However, it is obviously possible that Kong Xingqiu is in the opponent's hands. This made him a little embarrassed. But soon he no longer had to worry about it, because the other party showed up directly. Buzz. There was a slight earthquake, and something earth-shaking seemed to have changed outside. Garen quickly exited the metal house and saw from a distance in the front direction of the island. On the beach, a huge silver-white metal platform of several hundred meters was slowly rising. There was a large cylindrical crystal jar standing on the platform. In the light yellow liquid inside, floating an unconscious female body, it was the missing Kong Xingqiu. There were two figures standing in front of Kong Xingqiu, one tall and one short. The taller one was the tall robot that had appeared before. It had a triangular head and a white crab logo on its chest. Its arms stretched out like two sickles. The blade looks like a small elephant. The tonnage is not generally powerful. It is obviously a power line. The other short figure was a naked woman disguised as Kong Xingqiu. She was holding a long sharp spear in her hand, the kind of knight's spear that could only be used while riding a horse in ancient times. But the height is only 1.6 meters, which is obviously a bit out of place. Volatiliter, the robot, spoke first. You also have similar fluctuations. It seems that we are the same kind. Garen had no idea what the other person was talking about. Do you want to fight? If not, just leave the people to me. I'm in a hurry, he said casually. Unless it was a large-scale bombing like just now, other methods would not threaten him at all. Even with the kind of bombing just now, the actual damage to him was not as huge as it seemed. It was just a minor injury. Hand over your divine mark, and I can let you leave safely. The robot shook the curved blade in its hand and said deeply. Do I look stupid? Garen was speechless. Please don't ask such a mentally retarded question. It will make me feel that my IQ is insulted and the divine pattern? He didn't have such a thing, so even if he wanted to give it to him, he wouldn't be able to give it to him. Otherwise I will kill her. The robot turned sideways and pointed the curved blade of one hand at Kong Xingqiu behind him. She is your sister, right? Don't you want to care about the life and death of your relatives? Garen didn't expect that the other party would come up with this move. No, it should be said that he basically forgot that he still had the identity of Kong Xiaofei. Now Kong Yuan's whereabouts are unknown, and Kong Xingxiu is also in the hands of the other party. Indeed, if it is him, such a face-to-face threat is indeed the best way. Then you kill him. Garen touched his chin and thought for a moment before answering. What he is least afraid of is being threatened. From the world of secret martial arts to now, basically no one has been able to threaten him. Neither the robot nor the woman seemed to expect Garen's straightforward answer. This was obviously unexpected, and they were stunned for a moment. At this moment, Garen moved instantly. The black metal plate in his hand was violently thrown forward, whizzing and spinning at high speed, and with terrifying kinetic energy, it hit the robot and the woman, as well as the ones behind them. Kong Xingxiu was also shrouded in it. Is he crazy? This was the same thought in the minds of the robot and the woman at this moment. Garen's action seemed to be to kill Kong Xingxiu together, without any intention of showing any mercy. The speed of all this was so fast that the woman barely had time to jump away. However, the robot itself was relatively bulky and had no time to dodge. She could only raise its double blades to block. Bang! The black metal plate spinning like a boomerang struck the robot's double blades hard, causing a harsh and huge vibration. The sound shocked the woman next to her and her body went numb. Before she had time to react, her eyes felt cold. There was a sharp pain in my neck, and then I couldn't feel anything anymore. The last scene I saw was Garen instantly pulling his hand out of his neck. Because she was suppressed for a moment, she didn't even have time to activate her true strength, so she was killed by Galen and fell into darkness unwillingly. This may be something neither she nor the robot expected at all. The robot here was hit by a black metal plate at high speed. With one hand, it tore the metal plate into two pieces, revealing a powerful and terrifying power. Hardly more than a galleon. You actually dared to kill Jialasi, kill my daughter. I want you to be buried with her, the robot roared angrily, waving its two knives and pounced hard on Garen. He puffed his arms and shoulders twice and spurted out large jets of high-temperature steam, spreading all around. The steam contained a clear and pungent smell. It obviously carries some kind of special toxicity. Garen closed his breathing, and now with his physical quality, he was able to continue fighting for at least 10 minutes while closing his breathing. Not afraid of any such gas attack at all. The two of them rushed towards each other without any tricks. Drink. Garen lowered his waist to gather energy and punched him head on. The robot also slashed with both swords at the same time. Give it your all. Only an idiot would fight with you. Garen suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, disappeared in a flash, and appeared directly behind the robot, hitting the robot's vest with a hard elbow. Bang! A dull sound. The robot was staggered directly. The vest is only slightly dented. This left Garen speechless. This metal is indeed a bit abnormal, and it can actually withstand more than 5 points of his power bombardment. You must know that in the world of secret martial arts, his strength of 2 or 3 points could reach extremely terrifying levels. Ordinary steel plates and iron sheets could be torn apart if they encountered nothing. In addition, even bullets could not penetrate his eyelids due to his hard qigong. It is only natural that he will eventually reach the point of being almost invincible. And now, although he does not have powerful hard skills, his sword skills are indeed the strongest and sharpest weapon. The wind of reversal. Garen raised his palm and turned it into a knife. When the robot turned around, he slashed at its neck. Laugh. A slight pain came from the palm of his hand. Garen was shocked and quickly stopped his hand and stepped back. Just as the two of them changed positions, he landed next to Kong Xingxiu, looking at the robot that rushed out more than 10 meters away. Garen raised his hand and glanced at the edge of his palm, where a trace of blood was slowly seeping out. His face suddenly became serious. What is this? He recalled that moment. There seemed to be something invisible and extremely sharp standing on the back of the robot's neck. He hit the sharp point with his own force, which caused the physical defense was actually broken and he was bleeding. It's like people can tear paper at will, but when the edge of the paper is extremely sharp, if we pull on it hard, it will be bleeding. This is the truth. The smaller the force-bearing area of the unit, the greater the pressure. The explosive power of galleons in an instant is so terrifying. It is all concentrated on that thin area of a sharp edge. It is called a ghost if it is not injured. Of course, the thing on the robot's neck seemed to be broken directly. This is also the effect of interaction forces. The latest technological product, invisible metal knife. The robot answered unexpectedly. Okay, it's time to send you on your way. Garen was stunned. What do you mean? The robot smiled coldly. The effect of the medicine has almost taken effect at this time, he said proudly. Your wounds will gradually rot and crack, and the muscle tissue and blood tissue will be quickly contaminated and parasitic. Then the parasitic bacteria will quickly penetrate into your body's internal tissues. It makes you miserable. How effective is the medicine? Garen looked at the wound on his palm. You said this? You've stopped talking. Looking at the edge of the palm without even a scar, the robot's voice stopped as abruptly as a duck. Impossible. He stared at Garen's hand in disbelief. This is the most powerful corrosive poison recently researched. How could it be possible? How could it be possible? He used two "how could it be possible" in a row, showing the shock in his heart at this moment. Garen didn't bother to pay attention to him and hit Kong Xingqiu's kin with a backhand punch. With a crash, the whole kin burst into pieces, and Kong Xingqiu's body was hugged by Garen. Garen could see at this moment that this robot was simply a researcher who had never done anything himself, hoping that his poison would work. Unfortunately, his poison was simply too powerful for Garen's terrifying physique, which averaged over 5 points. It's just pediatrics. Holding Kong Xingqiu's waist with one hand, Garen walked to the robot. Tell me, where is Kong Yuan? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1193. Kong Yuan? What are you talking about? The robot took 2 steps back. Galen guessed him correctly. He was indeed just an ordinary scientific researcher with little combat ability. In other words, he had obtained part of the Slayer's pseudo-divine pattern. Is an imitation, but it doesn't have the guts to show its strength. Just like a thin ordinary person, no matter how thin he is, he still has strength. With a little training and enough courage, he can easily kill his original self. The man in front of him obviously didn't even have the courage. He relied on thick armor for defense. The first thing he thought of was to make himself invincible. Use poison against enemies. For such a small character, Garen didn't even have the energy to kill him. Didn't you capture Kong Yuan? Garen asked impatiently. The robot backed away continuously, looking extremely panicked. I don't know what you are talking about. What Kong Yuan? I don't know anything. You loser. Garen was really impatient. It seemed that the other party didn't know anything. He stretched out his hand and turned his palm into a knife, and rushed forward fiercely. With a sneer, the palm of his hand pierced the robot's chest directly, like a real blade, with violent high-speed vibrations, swiping from top to bottom. Suddenly, a clear white line appeared in the middle of the entire robot's body. Garen jumped away holding Kong Xingqiu with one hand, and quickly left 10 meters away. There was a roar and vibration behind him. Boom! The robot exploded. The fire burned for a while, and almost no one appeared from the surroundings. Garen was also sure that the enemies here might have evacuated quickly. Seeing the flames burning bigger and bigger, he originally wanted to go over and check if there were any trophies, but he only can give up. The question now is, Where to find the departing ship? Garen looked around and found no navigational props at all. People here should have a boat to leave, or a plane. He began to carry the unconscious Kong Xingqiu around the island. Soon, in the center of the island, a white helicopter slowly took off. The pilot was a black man. Galen threatened him and the aircraft flew directly into the distance. Soon the helicopter disappeared above the sea level, leaving only the people on the island getting more and more burned. Thick smoke billowed into the sky and turned into black and gray smoke columns. No one noticed that at one end of the island, in the center of the robot explosion, a crystal-clear white gem was slowly shining in the gradually extinguishing fire. The gemstone is hexagonal, as if it has been polished and carved, and is crisp and bright. It exudes an aura of soul power that ordinary people cannot detect at all. If Garen were here, he would definitely recognize it immediately. This is simply a missing soul power crystal, which is also the component of the soul ring that he has always valued most. It is also part of the soul seed. The soul crystal must contain various precious experiences, insights, and power. Although the ability to condense is not as advanced as the soul seed, it only takes a few soul crystals to condense and refine a soul seed. If Garen gets it, he can turn it into soul power and absorb it. Maybe he can condense a new soul seed and turn his soul ring into a 4-seed soul ring. It will also greatly benefit him when he enters a higher level of the Demon King level. Shorten the time and at the same time increase the limit of the soul. As long as you enter the 5-type soul ring stage, and then break through, you can reach the 7-color stage, which is to condense a total of 7 colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple soul rings again. Finally reach the level of true spirit. After all, the Demon King level also has levels. Or you can use it as pure soul power to strengthen your physical fitness. Achieve the purpose of further accelerating your own growth. It's a pity that he didn't pay much attention to such a small role, and he didn't have time to check carefully with Kong Xingqiu, so he left like this. Only one soul crystal was left shining brightly in place. The soul crystal was lying crookedly on the scorched and still smoking black metal. Suddenly, it was gently pinched and grabbed by a big hand. The killer's soul crystal imitates the divine pattern. A deep male voice sounded slowly. It was a black man wrapped in a black trench coat. His face could not be seen, but his deep voice could only be heard. He carefully collected the soul crystal and hid it inside the windbreaker. Then he looked far away in the direction Garen left. Collect 2 more and you will be able to condense the seeds of divine patterns. He murmured and turned to look at the sky, where a plane was slowly flying over at a low altitude and dropped a suspended ladder. The helicopter flew slowly, with the endless sea in front and behind in all directions. Garen sat on the plane and kept making calls. Unfortunately, this place was out of the way, and his mobile phone was not a satellite phone, so there was no way to connect to the signal. Is there communication? He looked at the driver impatiently. Yes. There must be, the black driver quickly replied loudly, fearing that he would kill him if he got angry. He was scared to fly the plane all the way. You must know that when he first got on the plane, Garen showed his ability to fly the plane by himself. If this guy hadn't seemed a little lazy, he probably wouldn't have survived until now. Call me this number, Garen ordered. The black driver immediately looked back at the phone screen. Follow the number and start contacting immediately. Unfortunately, the number communication was also unavailable. Garen was helpless. It was very scary that the communication on the plane could not be connected. It would not have mattered if he was alone, but now he was accompanied by someone. It would be really troublesome if I still swam back as before. Is there an emergency radio? He asked the driver with the last glimmer of hope. No, the pilot became even more panicked, but I'm pulling up the chart. There should be a large supply island nearby. We often go there to replenish our living expenses. Then go there, Garen made the final decision. Beside him, Kong Xingqiu slowly woke up at this time. Well. Where is this? She rubbed her head and slowly opened her eyes. It's at sea. Garen looked back at her. I remember I seem to have been kidnapped, Kong Xingxiu said hesitantly. How long have I been unconscious? She spoke smoothly. How do I know how long you have been unconscious? It's not short anyway, Garen said angrily. I went to the sea to swim and play just for you. It's not like you neglected your duties and left the local area, otherwise how could I have been kidnapped? Kong Xingxiu was in good spirits as soon as she woke up, and started quarreling with Garen. Okay, I was wrong. I shouldn't have left my position casually since he promised everyone to protect everyone's rear. Garen was not an irresponsible person, so he simply didn't argue with her. This was indeed his fault. What should we do now? Kong Xingxiu frowned and looked at the black man driving the plane in front of him. Find a way to contact the outside world, and then wait for rescue support, Garen answered concisely and clearly. It would be best if we could contact Kuabai and the others. However, the most important thing to do now is to find out first what kind of force is attacking us. He focused his attention on the driver in front. I say. According to international standard laws, you cannot abuse prisoners, the black driver shouted quickly. First of all, who are you? Garen asked directly. White Crab, I am an ordinary pilot belonging to the White Crab Army, the black man replied immediately. He didn't dare to pause at all, for fear of being late in answering and risking his life. He just watched Garen kill more than 100 elites without blinking an eye. You must know that many of the elites were terrifying after being transformed by semi-mechanization. It is common for characters to kill people without blinking an eye. But one by one, they were smashed and destroyed by Garen as if he was chopping up a watermelon. Most of those who survived were in hiding, for fear of being killed. White Crab. Yes, the black chick nodded like he was pecking at rice. The White Crab Army is an independent private army. We don't know our true affiliation, but the general tasks are issued by the commander-in-chief above. Our small island base, it's just one of the more than 20 islands under the command of the commander-in-chief. The code name is the Biochemical Legion. There are many other legions. Who is the commander-in-chief of the White Crab Army? Kong Xingxiu asked coldly. This is the key to the problem. This White Crab Army is probably connected with their inner ghost, otherwise they would not have such a clear grasp of their whereabouts. And captured her just after Garen left. Where's Kong Yuan? Are you okay? Garen asked Kong Xingxiu in a low voice. You just remembered it now, Kong Xingxiu rolled his eyes at him. It's okay, he was just temporarily protected. He doesn't know what happened yet. He was asked to cooperate in the name of assisting in the investigation of a murder case. Now at the police station. That's good, Garen nodded. Start listening to black people's explanations. How could I, the commander-in-chief, an ordinary soldier, know this? The black man shouted loudly at this time. I'm just a soldier, he kept repeating. Okay, I know you are just a soldier. Garen was speechless. Tell me everything you know. Understood, the black man breathed a sigh of relief. On a cruise ship. The nine-tailed fox Liwa stared at the opponent's heavy robot as if facing a formidable enemy. The appearance of this humanoid robot is no different from that of ordinary people. The only difference is that there is a metal ball swinging at high speed in series with its arm. The surface of the ball is covered with dense spikes. The robot is 1.8 meters tall and has a thin body. It looks more like a person wearing armored clothes than a machine. But his neck clearly has a cluster of gaps connected by lines of metal. From the outside looking in, you can see that there is no flesh and blood in the neck, only wires and metal bars. The waves were getting bigger and bigger, and the entire cruise ship was littered with corpses. The corpses' signs of death were very obvious. All of them had collapsed sternums, had their chests smashed by something heavy, and died of internal bleeding. Among the dead were crew members and agents, but mostly passengers. This robot suddenly rushed out from among the passengers. When Garen and the others were fighting outside, he lurked and remained motionless. However, after Garen left, he suddenly attacked the nine-tailed fox. Although she realized something was wrong in time and dodged away, the nine-tailed fox was still injured in the waist by the extremely fast poisonous needle. The steel needle was extremely powerful. Not to mention the toxicity, the force directly penetrated the muscles in her waist. At this time, blood slowly dripped down from her right waist. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 1194. The nine-tailed fox endured the severe pain and supported the confrontation with the robot. Liwa was holding a gun by the side, but her face was pale. Her marksmanship is very strong, but the power of the pistol is relatively weak and cannot penetrate the shell of the robot. In this case, she could not pose a threat at all. Now the situation can only be supported by the nine-tailed fox alone. It's the white crab again. The nine-tailed fox stared at the white crab pattern on the robot's chest with a hint of anger. Who are you? Why did you sneak attack on us? The robot slowly stopped rotating the steel ball on its arm and let out a weird laugh. Targeting? I'm just following orders. As for why I'm targeting you, I don't know. With your injuries and the corrosive poison, even if you are very strong, you will definitely fall into a coma and shock state within 10 minutes. I can easily win by just waiting, without spending any energy at all. He said every word. Words, obviously with obvious intelligence. Despicable, Liwa couldn't help but curse loudly. Despicable, the robot laughed again. Even if I don't attack you, you won't be able to escape from this ship. My speed is 1.4 times that of you, nine-tailed fox, and my strength is 2.3 times that of you. In addition, my body is covered with the latest corrosive poison that I just developed. I will be in danger if I touch you. Damn it! Do you think you have a chance of winning? Funny. You're not a robot, the nine-tailed fox was slightly surprised. Of course not, the robot replied with a smile, I'm just controlling this machine body remotely. It's a pity for you. Suddenly, before he could finish his words, his voice stopped abruptly. It seems that I heard some other news. Huh? That idiot Baikal is actually dead, he said with a tone of surprise and confusion, more like talking to himself. It looks like it's almost time to deal with you. The metal ball in his hand spun again, turning into a phantom wheel, causing a sharp whistling sound. I have already investigated all your trump cards. You should die. He stepped on it suddenly, and with a boom, the deck dented, and the entire robot shot towards the two women like lightning. Retreat, the nine-tailed fox swung the ribbon and rotated her body at high speed. Countless white ribbons formed circles of flexible defense walls around her. But at the same time, the wound on her waist also tore wider, and blood slowly spattered. The dyed ribbons were everywhere. White with red, giving people a gorgeous feeling. At the same time, Liwa was swept away by the nine-tailed ribbon, and her whole body was thrown up high like a cloud and mist, and fell to the sea outside the deck. What surprised her was that on the sea where she was about to fall, someone was driving a speedboat waiting below. It was a strong man, and he caught the pear blossom with both hands. Bang! The two collided hard on the speedboat, and there was a slight sound of fracture in Han's arm, but his expression remained unchanged. He immediately turned around and started to drive the speedboat, and quickly left in the distance. What should I do with Kuwabai? Liwa asked anxiously. I finally climbed up from the speedboat and stood firm. There will be someone to help the boss, the big man replied quickly. Don't worry, we are the real drag now. Okay, Liwa calmed down. At this moment, there was a huge explosion on the cruise ship. Boom! The deafening explosion spread to the speedboat on Liwa's side, causing their scalps to tingle and their ears to buzz. My eyes were so blurry that I could hardly see anything. In the light of the fire, a slender figure jumped out of the air and landed on another speedboat on the sea not far away. The speedboat rushed out of the side of the cruise ship and caught the nine-tailed fox. "Let's go," the nine-tailed fox shouted, covered in blood. The two speedboats rushed towards the distant sea level without hesitation. On the deck, the steel ball robot rushed out of the flames, looked at the two speedboats that had escaped for some distance, and snorted coldly. Suddenly he looked up and looked in the direction of the speedboat, where a huge white warship was rapidly approaching. "Vulture number 1? You're lucky." He jumped directly into the sea water and quickly disappeared into the depths of the sea. It was said to be a sneak attack, but in fact Juwiahu and he knew very well that even if it was not a sneak attack and a head-on confrontation, Juwiahu would not be an opponent of the robot. This was a human body against a top product of pure technology. There is no comparison at all. The true strength of the nine-tailed fox is actually ranked at the 4th to 5th level among vultures. Bang! Countless bullets and missiles fiercely pulled out a large amount of white smoke and flew towards Garen. This is on another island, and the same scene is happening here again. Garen was once trapped in a tight siege after the black pilot landed here. But this time I was even better prepared. Not to mention that the firepower was much stronger than last time, and even electromagnetic field bombs and poison gas bombs were used without hesitation. It was obvious that they had been prepared for it. Garen asked the black people to fly away from here with Kong Xingxiu, and he himself faced the White Crab army on the island. Holding a long saber that he found from nowhere, the soil under Garen's feet exploded again and again. The huge reaction force allowed him to quickly dodge the large amount of artillery fire that was bombarding him. Aha! There was a flash of blood, and even though several soldiers with submachine guns in their hands were armed to the teeth, they were swept past by Garen, and they were killed with holes directly in their necks. Garen's figure did not stop at all. Compared to the last confrontation, although this time the firepower was much greater, he also had more experience. He was able to cope with it more confidently, facing the enemies over 200 people shooting at each other again. He ignored the bullets at all, waving his saber and moving at high speed. Normal bullets could not aim at him, but stray bullets were blocked by him casually, and the ricocheting bullets could not even break his skin. As for the explosive shells, except for being hit occasionally, there were no serious injuries. In the coconut grove, Garen was flying like a ghost with a saber in hand. Every time he passed by a place, the soldiers there fell directly. "Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw." There was a loud roar, and the soldiers behind immediately abandoned their comrades in front and retreated without hesitation. The fighter jets swooped down, screaming and releasing missiles. Boom boom boom. Explosive flames exploded not far from Garen again and again, but each time he avoided it in advance as if he knew the trajectory of the missile bombing in advance. Suddenly, a missile flew towards him and turned a corner in mid-air. Garen, who originally thought he had avoided it, was slightly startled. Hot pursuit. He lifted his foot, and a large piece of stone and soil immediately spattered out, forming a black dart that accurately hit the heat-seeking missile in advance. Boom! This missile is extremely powerful. Terrifying heat and flames exploded in mid-air, making all explosions around them seem much smaller. Garen raised his hand to block the incoming air waves and high temperature, and quickly moved to another position. Rush forward quickly. This is the advantage of having a small target and fast speed. In addition, his physique is strong enough, and it is useless unless he is bombed from the front. Therefore, the myth of one person defeating a small army has once again happened in this world. Swish. With two crisp sounds, a bunker that Garen passed by suddenly went silent. The whole of the gun was thrust straight into it by Garen's knife. The people inside died on the spot and could no longer die. The huge power is accompanied by the shock technique. In that kind of confined space, the people inside are directly shocked to death without exception. There were more than a dozen bunkers and several tanks and vehicles in a row, all of which were destroyed and defeated by Garen's ghostly attack. He finally picked up a submachine gun and fired at the armed helicopter hovering in the sky. The bullets jingled at the bottom of the helicopter, hitting some key part, causing the entire helicopter to shake violently and circle, and soon one after another fell and hit the ground. Bang bang bang, the continuous explosions caused this island, which was larger than the previous island, to continuously shake. If someone can look down from the sky, they can see that the entire B-shaped island is covered with flames, wreckage, burning woods, corpses, and blood on the white ground. There was only one person standing in the middle. That's Galleon's. The clothes on his body had been destroyed long ago, and now he was wearing a white crab military uniform that was ripped off from someone unknown, except that the white crab's chest pattern was torn off by him. Holding his saber upside down, Garen looked at the rapidly retreating warships from a distance, feeling bored. It's not challenging at all, it's really boring. Then let me be your opponent. A sharp female voice came from behind him. Garen turned around and saw a young blonde woman wearing a white tights strolling over. Her figure was convex and her neck was zipped down, revealing her deep cleavage. The only regret was that her face had wearing a silver white metal mask. And like the previous robot, this woman also exudes faint soul power fluctuations. The senior management of the White Crab Army, Garen raised his eyebrows. Clang. The woman teleported and appeared behind him, stabbing his lower back with a dagger. Blocked by Galleon. You're so welcome, Garen chuckled, reversed his saber and stabbed back. At the same time, he raised his other hand into a knife and swung a circle to hit the woman's shoulder. With his strength, even if he touches the edge, the opponent may be injured and severely injured. This is the advantage of being strong enough. You only need to hit the opponent once, which is enough to decide the outcome. However, what Garen didn't expect was that the woman was very fast. She did a light backflip, turned several somersaults and fell into the distance. The wind from behind Garen's sword shook, and disappeared in the same place, appearing directly below the woman's somersault. The two looked at each other, one at a time. A smile appeared on Garen's lips. The blade slashed upwards without mercy. Hiss. The woman was still rolling in the air, and she never expected that the Galleon's speed was so much faster than her. Quickly activate your ability. Suddenly, her body moved faster, and a faint gust of wind surrounded her. The airflow brought by the wind formed a defense that seemed to block Garen's blade. At the same time, the woman turned her body and made a flip movement in the air, barely able to avoid Garen's slashing attack. Comparing tricks with me, Garen's laughter suddenly sounded, and the woman's pupils shrank instantly. He actually saw the saber stabbing him in the head again. There was a trace of despair in her eyes, and she closed her eyes suddenly. Laugh. Boom. Another more terrifying explosion. Garen looked at the violent explosion more than 10 meters away with lingering fear. Fortunately, he retreated immediately after stabbing the opponent. The people of the White Crab Army seemed to like self-destruction the most, so he didn't need the saber, so he ran away. Fortunately, he avoided it, otherwise he would have been injured again at such a close distance. The slight injury I suffered earlier has not healed yet, but I can't afford to be hurt again.